Over the last weekend, Turkey marked a year since a faction of our military attempted to take power by a coup. That coup failed, thanks in part to the opposition of Turks who took to the streets to oppose the coup plotters. We take a look at Turkey 1 year since that failed coup. Also on the program, we'll bring you the latest on the referendum held by the opposition in Venezuela. And then we'll bring you tributes to a man who served Nigeria till his very last breath. I am Segun Ojumu. Welcome to Hindsight. Segun Ojumu. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria.
July the 15th made it exactly a year since the failed coup attempt in Turkey. Nearly 250 people died and over 2,000 were wounded fighting the coup attempt by an army faction. Over the weekend, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan gave emotional speeches to tens of thousands of people, heaping praises on them. He also praised members of parliament who had defended democracy and his government. In the intervening period, the government has led a crackdown on alleged coup supporters. More than 150,000 state employees have been sacked and some 50,000 people have been arrested. You may be wondering why that coup failed. Well, it did because it, one, lacked support in higher echelons of the armed forces, and then there was no political backing. Let's bring you some of what Mr. Erdogan said at one of those rallies.
But it's a fact that without crushing the pawns, we cannot get to the other players in the chessboard, and we cannot get to the king. For this reason, we will decapitate these betrayers first.
Now, absent at those rallies were members of where President Erdogan spoke, where his opponents, they boycotted all the ceremonies put together by government. They say his government's actions over the past year amounts to an attempt to purge dissent. On the eve of the anniversary, the ambassador of Turkey to Nigeria, Hakan Çakil, pushed back those very accusations. His pushback came during a press conference at the Embassy of Turkey in Abuja. Mr. Çakil described the coup plotters as terrorists. He also said Turkey is not a dictatorship. Have a listen to more on what he had to say.
A total alignment with the European Council decisions. First of all, Turkey is not a dictatorship, and the results of the referendum is accepted by the international bodies which came to observe the election process in Turkey, and they endorsed that it was a fair and legitimate legal election. This is number one. So, some people, especially the members of the FETÖ terrorist organization, they are trying to present Turkey as a dictatorship, which is not. They are always misguiding the international media and public. Turkey is a state of law. Everyone has the right to defend him or herself. Every legal trial has been carried out in a very transparent manner. All the courts are open for the observing of the people for the trial. We also continue our cooperation and constructive dialogue with the European Union, United Nations, and the Organization of Security Conference in Europe. We are always taking into consideration the suggestions of the recommendations of the Council of Europe. For instance, an inquiry commission established in Turkey with a view to receiving some complaints of the Turkish citizens which may stem from the actions of the government. So the human rights situation in Turkey, the fundamental human rights situation is Turkey at the international standards at the time being. It's not a dictatorship. It's a very free country. The president of Turkey, he has been criticized by anyone, unlike the misguided media efforts. Everyone can criticize the government and Turkey. I'm sure that you followed main opposition parties stage a protest walk from Ankara to Istanbul all the way.
Okay, we did say earlier that the Turkish government has been heavily criticized for shutting down some media organizations. Journalists at that press conference asked Mr. Çakıl what his reaction to that accusation is. Here's his response.
Under the rule of law, all citizens who made offenses should be punished. I think we are agreed on this. If you are a country under a rule of law, if they violate your human right, your basic right, they should be punished through independent courts. In Turkey, the trials of the putschist, whatever you say, terrorist, I say terrorist, has been continuing. And you are very well aware that, your newspaper is very well aware that, Daily Trust is very well aware that. These people, these terrorist people, they have infiltrated the Turkish bureaucracy, Turkish army, Turkish national police through the years, and they stage this terrorist activity. So they will be trialed by the independent courts.
Now, that press conference wasn't all about the failed coup's anniversary. The ambassador spoke about bilateral relations between both countries, between Nigeria and Turkey, that is. He spoke about trade, which he said was stable. He was also asked to react to some suggestions some Nigerian students in Turkey were arrested.
In 2014, it was $2.5 billion US dollars. 2015, it was 1.1 billion US dollars. But the decrease came from the decrease in the energy prices, energy unit prices. And this year, I mean 2016, it was about roughly 1.1 again. This year also we will reach the same number, as far as I have seen. We will reach the same number. Very, very stable trade relations, balanced trade relations, and in favor of Nigeria, because we are exporting too much crude oil from Nigeria and LNG also from Nigeria. False news, misguided news spread by this terrorist organization. None of the Nigerian students arrested. I was very close contact with the Nigerian embassy in Ankara at the time. I was asking them, do you have any information who were arrested, in which prisons they have? In my capacity, I searched everything. None of the Nigerian students arrested in Turkey.
That was the ambassador of Turkey to Nigeria, Hakan Çakıl there. Now, after the break, Hindsight takes a look at the development in the South American country, Venezuela. Plus, we'll bring you tributes to a true son of Nigeria who has passed on. Stay with us. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria.
back to the program Hindsight. Let's go now to Venezuela, where the opposition there held a referendum over the weekend. The results strongly backed opposition to the socialist government's proposed constitutional changes. It, however, has no legal backing. Venezuela remains polarized between supporters of President Nicolas Maduro and the opposition, which wants fresh elections. A nurse was shot dead while queuing to vote in the capital, Caracas. I have been speaking to the Deputy Mission Chief of the Embassy of Venezuela, Maria Luna, about the developments in her country. Here is what she told me. Okay, thank you very much for coming
Thanks for
here.
inviting me.
Of course. Now, almost 7 million people voted within your country, and over 600,000 voted abroad in yesterday's poll. Fine, it has no legal status, but surely this vote should tell your government something, because 98% of those who voted rejected the proposal of Nicolas Maduro. What is your reaction to that?
Well, certainly this poll has no legal status because it's not expressed in the Constitution, this national Constitution I brought today. So in that sense, I must say that your statistics about this it has no legal statement, so it has not credibility about that. And yes, for sure, this poll that yesterday happened abroad is now once again another proof to the international community that we Venezuelans, we are so peaceful and democratic that even when it's not allowed, that even when it's illegal, we allow them to go and count themselves abroad for a place visit that is not in this constitution. No, you know?
Yeah, but some will say the fact that almost 7 million people came out to vote shows that people are not happy about what the government is proposing.
The opposition is not happy. The opposition is not the majority of the people. The opposition is just doing it just to go against the government. But you know, they were majority in the National Assembly, and we respect that because we went for polling and they won the National Assembly. So now they are saying that it's illegal. So.
Okay, very well. Now, Mr. Maduro argues that the Constituent Assembly is the only way to help Venezuela out of its economic and political crisis. Can you explain to us how that will work?
Yeah, the Constitution is a power expressed in the Constitution, in the Articles 347, 348, and 349, and it's about to argue how to recover the peace and unity again, and how to give constitutional status to the missions, to our social missions, like education, housing, and healthcare. And it's the only way we have now, because the opposition didn't reply our requesting for dialogue. Didn't reply, never reply. Even when this requesting for dialogue was made also by the international community, they never reply for it. So they didn't want dialogue. So our best way is to use our constitution to create another one which will be taking care about the population, about the powers, people's power, which is really important.
Okay, talking about the new constitution, again, the opposition fears that the process of setting up a new constituent assembly and rewriting the constitution will almost certainly delay this year's regional elections and next year's presidential election. Is that a valid concern, you think?
Well, actually, that question makes me think that once again, the opposition only want the power by force. They don't want the dialogue. They just want to win the election and take the power. You know, they won the National Assembly by majority.
In 2015?
Yes, last year, 2 years ago. And they use this publicity about taking care of the population, about fixing the problems, and they didn't argue in the National Assembly. They never argue about that. So that's why we are calling to the new constitution, because it's the best way we have now. It's the answer we have now, you know, because we are sick and tired of any struggle every day from the opposition. So even they dare to kill the people they believe they are from the government, they kill it on the street. I don't know if you have read about the guy that was dead, burned on the street because they believe, because it was black guy, it was from the government, so they shoot and killed him. So it has no sense. It's time for new constitution. It's time for peace now. So.
Okay. Now, if that constitution comes into force, isn't Venezuela in danger of becoming a dictatorship? Because that is a fear, that's another concern of the opposition. You're smiling about that.
Yes. After all I have explained, you believe that we are becoming dictatorship?
They believe that the president wants to have all the powers.
It's not the president, it's the people's power. And you know, the people's power is above any electoral poll. The people's power is more important. So I don't think that we are becoming dictatorship, because actually it's the second time we are going to this kind of election. So it's not dictatorship.
Okay, very well. As we round up now, we still understand that basic necessities in your countries, milk, sugar, medicines, some of those things still remain scarce, right? Is that a true reflection of what is happening and what has been done to solve this problem?
I wish I could have time enough to show you videos of my family and friends going to restaurants and having fun every day and doing shopping on the markets and pharmacies. So it's not true.
So where do we get these stories? Where do those stories come? Because we see the pictures.
It's only fake media.
Fake news?
Yes. It's fake media, it's fake news.
Right, let's end the program tonight by paying tribute to a man who many say served God and country. I'm talking about Babatunde Oshotimehin, former Minister of Health and Executive Director, United Nations Population Fund. He died on June the 4th. Leading the tribute was Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale. Our health correspondent, Chika Onyesi, was at that service of songs organized in honor of Professor Oshotimehin in Abuja by the National Action Committee Against AIDS.
Professor Babatunde Oshotimehin was born on the 6th of February 1949. During his life, he served as the Director General, National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA, and a UN Under-Secretary General. As a former Minister of Health, the late professor championed advocacy for women's sexual and reproductive health. And now in death, the Nigerian government have gathered to eulogize his life and times.
Prof brought a very new innovation into healthcare provision in the country. Prof commissioned the Strategic National Health Plan.
We will miss his commitment to the Nigerian woman, the Nigerian girl, the Nigerian child, and particularly the adolescent. And a firm believer in the concept of no woman should die giving life.
His service, his commitment, and his dedication to duty, and his spirit of innovation, and especially in respect of family planning and population issues.
Mrs. Olufunke Oshotimehin, his wife of 44 years, had nothing but kind words for the late professor.
There are some people who are very good outside, and they are horrible inside their homes. I testify. But Babatunde was a good, kind-hearted, loving, caring, protective person. He cared much for me, he cared much for the children.
Professor Oshotimehin was the Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund and had a strong voice in promoting population and development. He died on the 4th of June at the age of 68.
And now the larger UN family under which he served also honored Babatunde Oshotimehin last Friday. Leading the tribute was Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, who described him as one of Nigeria's finest.
We have converged here, yes, to mourn, but certainly not just to mourn, but to celebrate and honor a great life, a great Nigerian life, a great and illustrious son of Nigeria, a Minister of Health who gave his utmost service not only to our fatherland, but also to humanity. Without equivocation, any nation on earth would have been immensely proud to have Professor Babatunde Oshotimehin as one of its own, and Nigeria is indeed very, very proud. It was therefore not surprising that the international community embraced him when he was appointed the Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund in 2012. And we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs embraced him, and we still embrace him, and opened for that reason a book of condolences at our ministry for him.
Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, paying tributes to the departed former Minister of Health, Babatunde Oshotimehin. And that's all we can take on the program tonight. Let's keep the conversation going online. We are on Twitter. Tweet us and we'll tweet you right back. We are on at Hindsight STV, or you can email us on hindsightsilverbird@gmail.com. See you again next week. I am Shegun Ojumu from me and the rest of the crew. Goodbye.